My dad missed my graduation for his fiance, so I missed their wedding. Actually, that's not quite true. I showed up, just not in the way they expected. Dad met Brielle when I was 15, 6 months after Mom died. She was 28, which made her closer to my age than his. She makes me feel young again, he'd say. Like that justified everything. What it really meant was that I reminded him of Mom, and Brielle didn't. The changes started small. Date nights became date weekends. Family dinners disappeared entirely. By my senior year, I was eating alone most nights, while Dad and Brielle went to wine tastings and couples yoga. You're basically an adult now, he'd say when I complained. You don't need me hovering. When graduation approached, I reminded him weekly, sent calendar invites, left sticky notes on his bathroom mirror. June 8th, Dad, 2:00 p.m. You promised you'd be there. He'd nod, check his phone, and assure me he wouldn't miss it for the world. He'd missed everything else that year. My college acceptance, my scholarship interview, even my 18th birthday dinner because Brielle had tickets to some concert. Then, 3 days before graduation, Brielle announced they'd booked a surprise trip to Napa for that exact weekend. It's non-refundable, Dad explained apologetically. And Brielle worked so hard planning it. Your graduation is just walking across a stage. We'll celebrate when I get back. I sat in the auditorium scanning for his face as they called my name. Mom's parents were there, crying. My aunt drove 4 hours. Even my cousin who lived in Seattle flew in. The seat I'd saved for Dad, right in the middle of the family section, stayed empty. That night, while I ate grocery store cake alone in our kitchen, his Instagram story showed him and Brielle clinking champagne glasses in a hot tub. When they got engaged 2 months later, I was expected to be thrilled. The wedding planning consumed everything. Brielle asked me to be a bridesmaid, then proceeded to choose a dress that cost $400 and required professional alterations. Family helps family, Dad said when I hesitated about the price. This from the man who'd refused to help with my college application fees because he was saving for the honeymoon. The wedding invitations arrived on expensive cardstock. 200 guests, an oceanside venue, a live band. Everything I'd dreamed my own wedding might be someday, if Dad ever bothered to show up for that either. I planned carefully. The week before the wedding, I told Dad I wouldn't be attending. You missed the most important day of my life for her. I'm returning the favor. He was furious, called me selfish and ungrateful, and accused me of trying to ruin his happiness. Brielle cried about toxic energy and poisonous family members, but I did show up. During the ceremony, right as the officiant asked if anyone objected, I walked down the aisle in my graduation gown and cap. I handed Dad the program from my graduation, his empty seat circled in red marker, then placed Mom's wedding ring on his chair. She would have been there, I said clearly. The room went silent. People were staring. What I didn't mention was the envelope I'd already mailed to every wedding guest that morning, containing screenshots of Dad's texts to Brielle during my actual graduation ceremony. Messages that read, "Thank God we escaped that boring ceremony," and "Can you imagine sitting through 3 hours of teenage speeches?" And one that said, "Your daughter's graduation would have been absolute torture." Except Brielle didn't have a daughter. The number he'd been texting wasn't hers. It belonged to his assistant. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. The silence in that room was deafening. Dad's face drained of color as he stared at the graduation program in his hands. Brielle looked confused, glancing between us with her perfectly styled eyebrows pulled together. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly, unsure whether to continue. "What are you talking about?" Brielle asked, her voice sharp. She was still holding her bouquet, white roses trembling slightly. "What assistant?" I pulled out my phone, turned up the volume, and played the voicemail. Dad's voice filled the pristine venue, echoing off the vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. "Vanessa, I can't stop thinking about last night. Brielle's staying at her mother's this weekend. Come over Friday. I'll leave the side door unlocked." The collective gasp from 200 guests was almost satisfying enough to justify the $400 bridesmaid dress hanging in my closet at home. Almost. Brielle snatched the phone from my hand, her acrylic nails scraping my palm. She replayed it 3 times, her face shifting from confusion to realization to rage. "Vanessa? Your assistant Vanessa? The 24-year-old you hired 6 months ago?" Dad tried to grab the phone. "Brielle, this is taken out of context. She's trying to sabotage us." "Context?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "The context is that while you were supposedly working late, you were with her. The context is that half your business trips included her on the company credit card. The context is, that's enough." Dad's voice was low, dangerous. The same tone he'd used when I questioned why Brielle was moving in so soon after Mom's death. The same tone that had shut down every conversation about him actually parenting me. But I wasn't 15 anymore, scared and grieving and desperate for any scrap of his attention. "No," I said clearly. "It's not nearly enough." I pulled out the folder I'd tucked under my graduation gown. 3 months of receipts, hotel bookings, restaurant charges, all from Dad's company account, all submitted for reimbursement, all with Vanessa listed as his guest. I'd gotten them from his home office 2 weeks ago while he and Brielle were at their couple's massage. December 3rd, the Ritz-Carlton. 2 rooms adjoining. Your anniversary trip with Brielle was actually the weekend she had food poisoning, remember? Except you weren't in Portland at a conference. You were in San Diego. I walked down the aisle, handing papers to guests in the front rows. January 14th, the weekend Brielle thought you were visiting your college roommate. You were in Vegas. Vanessa posted photos from the same hotel lobby on her Instagram. She tagged the location. Brielle was scrolling frantically on her own phone now, pulling up Vanessa's social media. Her hands were shaking. "You said you were at Brett's bachelor party in Seattle that weekend. February 8th, I continued, my voice steady. Dinner at Maestro's. 437. Wine pairing. Vanessa uploaded a photo of the exact wine you ordered. Same night, same restaurant, same table by the window. I paused. That was my 18th birthday. The one you missed because of an emergency client dinner. My aunt stood up from her seat, her face twisted with disgust. She'd driven 4 hours to my graduation, sat with me during the reception, and helped me box up the pieces of my broken relationship with Dad. Richard, is this true? Dad's jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might actually confess, might show some shred of the man who used to read me bedtime stories and taught me to ride a bike. Instead, he pointed at me. Get out. You're not welcome here. You've always been jealous of Brielle, always trying to come between us. Your mother would be ashamed. The words hit like a physical blow. My mother, who'd loved him for 20 years, who'd died slowly of cancer while he'd held her hand and promised to take care of me. My mother, whose wedding ring now sat on his chair, a silent witness to everything he'd become. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't you dare talk about Mom. Brielle threw her bouquet on the ground, white roses scattering across the aisle. We're done. The wedding is off. Everyone leave. She turned to Dad, her face streaked with mascara. And you can sleep at Vanessa's tonight. I'm changing the locks. She swept past me, her $3,000 dress rustling. Her bridesmaids scrambled after her, shooting me looks that ranged from sympathetic to hostile. The groomsmen stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort Dad or leave. Dad grabbed my arm as I turned to go. You've ruined everything. Everything. Are you happy now? I looked at his hand on my arm, then met his eyes. You ruined it yourself. I just made sure everyone else could see. I pulled free and walked back down the aisle, past the staring guests, past the expensive floral arrangements and the string quartet that had stopped playing. My grandparents caught up with me in the parking lot. Grandma was crying, pulling me into a tight hug that smelled like her rose perfume. Your mother would be proud, she whispered. So proud. We drove to their house, the same house where Mom had grown up, where I'd spent every holiday before she got sick. Grandpa made coffee while I sat at the kitchen table, still in my graduation gown, and told them everything. The missed events, the loneliness, the way Dad had slowly erased Mom from the house and from his life. The assistant named Vanessa, who I'd discovered 3 months ago when I'd used Dad's laptop to print my college essays. I didn't plan to expose the affair, I admitted. I just wanted him to feel something, to understand what it's like to have someone not show up for you. But when I found those texts, and the receipts, and realized he'd been lying to Brielle too, he made his choices, Grandpa said firmly. You showed courage today. That took strength, but I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out, exhausted from carrying 3 months of secrets and 6 months of grief and 18 years of trying to be the daughter he wanted instead of the burden I'd become. My phone started buzzing, text after text, some from wedding guests I barely knew, asking if I was okay, others from relatives I'd never met, telling me I'd crossed a line, one from my cousin in Seattle. Holy shit, you're my hero. Then one from Brielle. I need to talk to you. Can we meet tomorrow? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Why? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Because I think we both deserved better than him. The coffee shop Brielle chose was 20 minutes from both our houses. Neutral territory. I arrived early, ordering a black coffee I didn't really want and claiming a corner table. My hands were shaking slightly. Part of me expected her to show up with Dad, to tell me I'd been wrong, that they'd worked things out and I was no longer welcome in his life. She arrived alone, her hair in a simple ponytail, no makeup. She looked younger without all the wedding preparation, closer to her actual 28 years. She ordered a latte and sat across from me, her hands wrapped around the cup like she needed the warmth. I left him, she said without preamble. Moved my stuff out yesterday while he was at work. My brother helped. I nodded, unsure what to say. I'm sorry. Don't be. She took a sip of her latte, wincing when it burned her tongue. I called Vanessa last night. We talked for 2 hours. She had no idea he was engaged. He told her you were away at college, that he was separated, that the wedding ring was just for show at work. She believed him? Why wouldn't she? He's charming, successful, emotionally available when he wants to be. Brielle's laugh was hollow. I believed him too. When we met, he told me his marriage had been dead for years, that your mom was cold and distant, that they only stayed together for you. My grip tightened on my coffee cup. That's a lie. Mom loved him. Even at the end, even when the cancer made her mean and scared, she loved him. I know that now. Brielle pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo. Vanessa sent me this. It was a text exchange between Dad and Vanessa from 6 months ago. My fiance doesn't understand me. She's too young, too immature. I made a mistake getting engaged. And another. You're the only one who really sees me. The same things he'd probably said about Mom to Brielle. The same things he'd say about Brielle to whoever came next. He's 47, I said quietly. You're 28. I'm 18. Vanessa's 24. Do you see the pattern? Brielle's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was special, that we had something real. He made me feel alive, like I was the only person who mattered. She laughed bitterly. God, I sound pathetic. You sound like someone he manipulated. I surprised myself by reaching across the table, touching her hand. He does that. Makes you feel like you're the problem when things go wrong, like you're asking for too much when you just want basic respect. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 people who'd loved the same man, and learned too late that he wasn't capable of loving anyone back. I'm sorry, Brielle said finally, for everything. For taking up all his time, for the graduation, for the bridesmaid dress, for not seeing what he was doing to you. You didn't know. I should have. She pulled her hand back, wiping her eyes. I was so caught up in being young and in love and having this fancy life that I didn't notice there was a kid in the house who was being neglected. I heard you eating dinner alone. I saw you waiting up for him on your birthday. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. The honesty hurt, but it was clean, not like Dad's lies. What are you going to do now? I asked. Move back to Portland. My old roommate says her couch is available until I find a place. Start over, probably get therapy to figure out why I thought dating a man almost 20 years older would end well. She attempted a smile. What about you? College in August. I got into state on a full scholarship. I was going to commute from home, but I trailed off. But home isn't really home anymore. It hasn't been for a while. We finished our coffee, exchanged numbers, and promised to stay in touch. I didn't know if we would. Sometimes people bonded through shared trauma only to drift apart once the crisis passed. But as I watched Brielle drive away in her packed car, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly. More like understanding. Dad called me 47 times over the next 3 days. I didn't answer. He showed up at my grandparents' house on day 4, pounding on the door until Grandpa threatened to call the police. I need to talk to my daughter, he shouted through the door. Your daughter doesn't want to talk to you, Grandpa called back. She's 18. She's still my kid. I have rights. You gave up those rights when you chose your affair over her graduation, Grandpa said, his voice hard. Now leave before I make good on calling the sheriff. Dad left, but not before slashing Grandpa's mailbox with his car keys. It was petty, vindictive, and exactly the kind of thing he'd do when he didn't get his way. Mom used to joke that he had the emotional regulation of a toddler when things didn't go according to plan. I'd never understood what she meant until now. The screenshots I'd mailed to wedding guests made their way onto Facebook within 48 hours. I hadn't posted them myself, but someone did, tagging Dad's business partners, his golf buddies, even his company's official page. The comments were brutal. Cheating on your fiance with an employee? Classy. This man missed his daughter's graduation for a weekend with his mistress. Disgusting. Fire him. You don't want this representing your company. Dad's firm put him on administrative leave pending an investigation into his use of company funds for personal expenses. Turned out dating your subordinate while charging dinners to the corporate card was frowned upon. Vanessa quit, moved to Denver, and blocked him on everything. Brielle filed for the return of her grandmother's engagement ring he'd proposed with, claiming it was given under false pretenses. The legal fees alone would cost him thousands. I watched his life unravel from the safety of my grandparents' guest room, feeling nothing. Maybe I should have felt guilty. Maybe I should have regretted the nuclear option. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered sitting alone on my 18th birthday, staring at my phone, waiting for a call that never came. My aunt set up a lunch with my cousin who'd flown in from Seattle. Her name was Kennedy, and she'd left home at 19 after her parents tried to force her into their church's arranged marriage program. You did the right thing, Kennedy said over sandwiches. Family doesn't get a free pass to treat you like garbage just because you share DNA. Everyone's saying I went too far. Everyone can shut up. She pointed a carrot stick at me. You gave him chances. You communicated clearly. You set boundaries. He ignored all of it. This wasn't revenge. It was consequences. There's a difference. It feels like revenge. Good. It should. He deserves to feel what you felt. Humiliated, forgotten, unimportant. Kennedy softened. Look, I'm not saying you'll feel great about this forever. You might have complicated feelings, but don't let anyone make you believe you were wrong for standing up for yourself. I nodded, pushing lettuce around my plate. Brielle apologized. Really? She said she should have noticed. That she was sorry for not seeing what he was doing to me. That's big of her. Kennedy considered this. You going to forgive her? I don't know. Maybe. She was a victim too, in a way. He lied to her about Mom, about Vanessa, probably about a dozen other things. But she still let him neglect you, whether she knew it consciously or not. Yeah. I took a bite of my sandwich, tasting nothing. Yeah. The weeks leading up to college were strange. I packed my dorm room essentials in boxes at my grandparents' house, went shopping for bedding and desk supplies with Grandma, registered for classes online, filled out housing forms, all the normal first-year college student things, except I was doing them without any input from Dad. Mom and I had talked about college when I was younger. She'd gone to state too, majored in English, joined the creative writing club. You'll love it, she'd said during one of her good days when the chemo fog had lifted. The campus has this beautiful library with tall windows. I used to study there for hours. I found photos of her college years in an album at my grandparents' house. Mom at 19, wearing high-waisted jeans and an oversized sweater, laughing with friends. Mom at her graduation, beaming next to her own parents. Mom on the library steps, books tucked under her arm. She was so happy there, Grandma said, looking over my shoulder. Those were good years for her. Before Dad, Grandma hesitated. Your father wasn't always like this. When they first met, he was kind, attentive. He wrote her poems, can you believe that? Sent her flowers for no reason. Your mom thought she'd won the lottery. What changed? Life, I suppose. Stress. He got promoted, started working longer hours. When you were born, he seemed to resent the attention you needed, like he was competing with a baby. She shook her head. Your mom tried everything. Therapy, date nights, counseling through the church. Nothing helped. By the time she got sick, they were basically roommates. He told Brielle their marriage was dead for years. That mom was cold. Grandma's face hardened. Your mother was the warmest person I knew. Even dying, she made sure you felt loved. Made sure you knew you mattered. She squeezed my hand. Don't let him rewrite history. Don't let him make her into someone she wasn't just to justify his choices. I left for college on a humid August morning. Grandpa loaded my boxes into his truck while Grandma fussed over my first aid kit and whether I'd packed enough socks. My aunt and Kennedy came to see me off, bringing cookies and advice. Call if you need anything, my aunt said, hugging me tight. Anything at all, even if it's just to talk. And don't take crap from your roommate, Kennedy added. Set boundaries early. The drive to campus took 90 minutes. Grandpa helped me move into my dorm room, a tiny space I'd be sharing with a girl named Patricia, who'd left a note saying she'd arrive tomorrow. We set up my bed, organized my desk, hung Mom's photos on the wall. You're going to do great things here, Grandpa said gruffly, pulling me into a hug. Your mom knew it. I know it. After he left, I sat on my narrow dorm bed, surrounded by boxes and the unfamiliar smell of industrial cleaning products, and cried. Not from sadness, exactly. From relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming weight of finally being free. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my life, my career, everything I built. I hope college is worth losing your father over. I blocked his number and unplugged my phone to charge. Freshman orientation was a blur of icebreakers and campus tours. I met Patricia, a biology major from upstate, who immediately asked if I wanted to hang Mom's photos on that side of the room, or would I prefer the window view. We clicked instantly, bonding over our shared hatred of small talk and love of bad reality TV. I joined the creative writing club, remembering Mom's stories about late-night workshops and critique sessions. The first meeting was in the same library she'd studied in, beneath those tall windows she'd described. I sat in a corner with my notebook, listening to other students share their work, and felt her presence like a hand on my shoulder. The creative writing professor, Dr. Helena Ward, was a published novelist with silver hair and sharp eyes. She read my first assignment, an essay about loss and betrayal, and asked me to stay after class. "This is raw," she said, tapping my pages. "Powerful. Have you considered expanding it? Into what? A memoir, perhaps? Or a personal essay for submission? There are journals that publish this kind of confessional work. It's good. Better than good. It's just something that happened to me. That's where the best writing comes from." She handed my essay back. "Think about it. You have a voice. Don't waste it." I thought about it. Over the next few weeks, between classes and study sessions and learning how to do my own laundry, I wrote. About Mom's death and Dad's abandonment. About Brielle and Vanessa and the wedding that wasn't. About graduation day and empty seats and the moment I realized I couldn't count on him anymore. The words poured out like poison I'd been storing. Dr. Ward helped me shape it, tighten it, make it hurt in all the right places. By October, I'd finished a 4,000-word essay titled The Empty Chair. I submitted it to a literary journal that specialized in personal narratives. I didn't expect to hear back. Most submissions got rejected, Dr. Ward had warned. But 3 weeks later, I got an email. "We'd love to publish your piece in our winter issue." The essay went live in December. Within 24 hours, it had been shared 1,200 times on social media. People commented about their own absent parents, their own broken families, their own moments of standing up. A few literary agents reached out, asking if I had more material. One wanted to discuss a book deal. Dad found the essay 4 days after publication. I know because he created a new email address to contact me, bypassing the block on his old one. "You made me look like a monster," he wrote. "Aired our private business to the entire world. You've humiliated me in front of clients, friends, everyone I know. Lawyers tell me I might have grounds for defamation." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Dr. Ward, who forwarded it to the university's legal department. They sent Dad a cease and desist letter explaining that truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and that contacting me again would result in a restraining order. He stopped emailing after that. By spring semester, The Empty Chair had been read over 100,000 times. I did a phone interview with a podcast about estranged families. A women's magazine asked me to write a follow-up about navigating college without parental support. The book agent convinced me to start outlining a memoir. Life became strange in the best way. I was no longer just the girl whose dad missed her graduation. I was a writer, a student, someone building something entirely my own. Patricia and I hosted movie nights in our dorm. I joined the campus literary magazine as an editor. I went to parties, made friends, stayed up too late talking about philosophy and bad poetry. Grandma sent care packages every 2 weeks. Cookies, notes, sometimes just cards that said, "Thinking of you." Grandpa called every Sunday to ask about classes and whether I was eating enough vegetables. My aunt visited for Parents' Weekend, taking Patricia and me out for dinner, and pretending not to notice when I cried during the dessert course. Kennedy flew in for my birthday in February, showing up with cupcakes and a card signed by half my relatives. We spent the weekend exploring the city, eating too much, and not talking about Dad at all. "You seem different," Kennedy said on her last night. "Lighter." "I feel different." I paused. "I don't think about him as much anymore." "That's good. That's healthy." "Sometimes I still get angry. Like randomly, I'll remember something he said or did, and I'll just burn. That's normal too. Healing isn't linear." Kennedy bumped my shoulder. "But you're doing it. That's what matters." The book agent, a woman named Rachel, called in March. "I've got interest from 3 publishers. They want the full proposal by May. Think you can have something ready?" "What exactly do they want?" "Your story. All of it. The grief, the neglect, the wedding, the aftermath, how you rebuilt. People are hungry for stories about cutting off toxic family, about choosing yourself. You've got something real here." I spent spring break at my grandparents' house, writing. Grandma brought me tea and sandwiches while I typed at the kitchen table. Grandpa proofread chapters, offering surprisingly sharp editorial notes. "This section drags," he'd say, or "more detail here. Make us feel it." The proposal came together. 60,000 words about losing my mother, losing my father, and finding myself in the wreckage. 3 publishers made offers. We went with the one offering the biggest advance, $75,000 split over 2 payments. I called my aunt crying. "That's more than Dad gave me my entire childhood." "That's because you earned it," she said fiercely. "You bled for that book. It's yours." I used part of the advance to pay back my grandparents for all the support they'd given me. They tried to refuse, but I insisted. The rest went into a savings account for future tuition and living expenses. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about money. Finals came and went. I finished freshman year with a 3.7 GPA and 2 more published essays. Patricia and I signed up to be roommates again for sophomore year. Dr. Ward invited me to be her teaching assistant in the fall. Summer arrived with the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer. I got an internship at a local magazine, writing features and learning layout design. In the evenings, I worked on the memoir. slowly building the narrative arc that would take readers from Mom's diagnosis to Dad's wedding to my first day of college. Brielle reached out in late June. We'd texted sporadically throughout the year, mostly surface-level check-ins. But this message was longer. I saw your essay. I'm proud of you. Also, I'm getting married. For real this time? To someone age-appropriate. I'd love if you could come. The wedding was small, just 30 people at a garden venue in Portland. Brielle's fiance was named Owen, a 31-year-old teacher with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. He clearly adored her. The way he touched the small of her back and listened when she talked. The way he'd looked at her wasn't possessive or performative. It was simply present. Thank you for coming, Brielle said during the reception. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. But you deserve to be happy. Real happy. Not the fake version Dad sold you. He called me last month. Wanted to meet up. Talk about what happened. My stomach tightened. Did you? No, I told him I'd moved on and he should too. She sipped her champagne. He's dating someone new, apparently. Works at his gym. She's 25. Of course she is. Vanessa warned her. Sent her screenshots of his old messages, told her everything. The girl blocked him immediately. I laughed, surprising myself. Good for Vanessa. She's thriving, by the way. Got promoted to senior coordinator at a tech company in Denver. Posted about it on LinkedIn with a whole caption about knowing your worth and leaving toxic situations. We stood together watching Owen dance with his mother, his obvious joy contagious. Do you think you'll ever talk to him again? Brielle asked quietly. Your dad? I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe someday, if he actually apologized and meant it. But I'm not holding my breath. What would a real apology even look like from him? I thought about it. Accountability. Not just, I'm sorry you're hurt, but I'm sorry I missed your graduation. I'm sorry I chose my affair over being your parent. I'm sorry I let you down. And then actually changing, which I don't think he's capable of. Probably not. Brielle squeezed my hand. But you're going to be okay. You already are. She was right. I was okay. More than okay, actually. I was building a life Dad couldn't touch or ruin or diminish. A life where I wasn't waiting for him to show up or notice me or care. The memoir was due to my publisher in September. I spent August writing and rewriting, shaping the narrative until it sang. Dr. Ward read the final draft, offering notes on structure and pacing. Rachel, my agent, pushed me to dig deeper in certain chapters, to not let Dad off the hook with vague language. This section where he misses your birthday, she said during a call. You write that he couldn't make it. But that's passive. He chose not to make it. He prioritized wine tasting with his mistress over his daughter. Say it. So I rewrote it. Made it sharper, clearer, more honest. Stripped away any protective instinct I still had for Dad's reputation. The manuscript went to the publisher on September 15th. 2 weeks later, they sent the cover design. My graduation cap and gown against a stark white background. The title in bold black letters. The Empty Chair. A memoir of loss, betrayal, and learning to save yourself. Publication date was set for March. 6 months to wait, to second guess, to wonder if I was making a mistake. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered why I'd written it. Not for revenge, though that was a side benefit. But for every kid who'd been overlooked, forgotten, pushed aside by a parent who couldn't be bothered to show up. Sophomore year started with familiar comfort. Patricia and I moved into a slightly bigger dorm room. I began my teaching assistant position with Dr. Ward, leading discussion sections for freshman composition. The magazine internship turned into a paying gig, writing a monthly column about student life. I dated briefly, a guy from my philosophy class named Theo, who was sweet but ultimately too focused on his pre-med track to make time for a relationship. We parted amicably, stayed friends, still grabbed coffee between classes. Life became beautifully ordinary. Classes, writing, work, friends, movie nights and study groups and terrible dining hall food. No drama, no crisis, just the steady rhythm of growing up. Dad tried to contact me one more time in November. This time through LinkedIn, of all places. A professional message asking to reconnect and discuss our relationship in a mature manner. I stared at it for a long time before blocking him there too. Christmas came. I spent it at my grandparents' house with my aunt and Kennedy. We cooked too much food, watched old movies, and exchanged modest gifts. Grandma gave me Mom's pearl necklace. The one she'd worn at her own wedding. She wanted you to have this when you were ready, Grandma said, fastening it around my neck. I wore it every day after that. A tangible reminder of the parent who'd loved me unconditionally, who'd shown up even when showing up was hard, who'd chosen me every single day until she couldn't anymore. The galley proofs of my memoir arrived in January. Seeing my words in actual book format made everything real. I did interviews for the publisher's marketing team, recorded promo videos, wrote guest posts for blogs about estrangement and healing. The publisher arranged a small book tour, 5 cities, mostly independent bookstores and college campuses. The tour started 2 weeks after publication, beginning at a bookstore 3 blocks from campus. Dr. Ward introduced me at the first event to a crowd of about 60 people. I read the chapter about graduation day, about the empty seat and the grocery store cake. When I finished, the room was silent except for someone sniffling in the back row. The Q&A was emotional. A woman in her 40s asked how I'd found the courage to cut Dad off. A college student wanted to know if I'd ever regretted it. A mother asked what she could do to make sure her daughter never felt the way I had. Just show up, I said simply. Even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. Your presence matters more than you know. Book sales started modestly but picked up momentum as reviews came in. A starred review from Publishers Weekly. A feature in People magazine about dysfunctional families. A morning show segment where I talked about generational patterns of neglect. The book hit the bestseller list in week 3. Not number 1, but number 7, which Rachel said was incredible for a debut memoir from an unknown author. The publisher ordered a second printing. Dad found out about the book in April. I know because he left a voicemail on my grandparents' landline, the one number he had that I couldn't block. Grandpa called to tell me. He's threatening to sue, Grandpa said. Says you've defamed him, destroyed his reputation, cost him business opportunities. Can he actually do that? Legally? No. Your publisher has lawyers who vetted every word. Everything in that book is documented truth. Grandpa paused, but he's angry, embarrassed. People at his country club are reading it. His boss read it. He's facing consequences and he doesn't like it. Good. I agree. But be prepared. He might escalate. He did. Dad hired a lawyer who sent threatening letters to my publisher, demanding the book be pulled from shelves. The publisher's legal team responded with a detailed refutation of every claim. The letters stopped. Then he tried public relations. Did an interview with a local podcast claiming I'd exaggerated everything, that he'd been a devoted father, that I was mentally unstable and seeking attention. The interviewer, who'd actually read my book, asked him point blank why he'd missed graduation. I had a work emergency, Dad lied smoothly. Your daughter has screenshots of your text from that day. You were in Napa Valley with your fiance. Those are fabricated. Multiple wedding guests confirmed receiving them. Are they all lying? The interview ended badly for Dad. The podcast released it anyway, prefacing it with a disclaimer about the documented evidence supporting my version of events. Dad became a minor villain in the online discourse about toxic parenting, his name synonymous with narcissistic fathers who abandoned their children. I watched it all from a distance, neither celebrating nor mourning. He'd made his choices. These were the natural results. My aunt called in May, her voice tight. Your dad had a heart attack. He's stable, but it was serious. He's asking for you. My hands went cold. Is he going to be okay? Probably. The doctors say it was moderate, not severe, but he's scared. She hesitated. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what's happening. I sat with the information for 3 days. Talked to Patricia, to Dr. Ward, to my therapist I'd started seeing sophomore year. Everyone had opinions, but they all boiled down to the same message. Only I could decide what felt right. I visited him on a Saturday afternoon. The hospital was the same one where Mom had died, which felt cruelly poetic. Dad looked smaller in the hospital bed, older. The machines beeping around him a reminder of his mortality. You came, he said, his voice weak. I'm not here to reconcile. I'm here because my aunt called and said you were sick. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. We sat in silence for a moment. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in years. Maybe he was. Your book, he started. Don't. I held up a hand. I don't want to hear that you're sorry unless you actually mean it. And I don't want to hear excuses. I'm not making excuses. He shifted in the bed, wincing. I didn't realize how bad it was. How much I'd hurt you. You knew. You just didn't care enough to change. His eyes filled with tears. You're right. I was selfish. I wanted to feel young and desirable and free. And you reminded me of responsibility and aging and your mother. And I couldn't handle that. It was the closest to honesty he'd ever come. But honesty without action was just words. What do you want from me, Dad? I don't know. Forgiveness, maybe. A chance to try again. I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. He nodded, looking away. I understand. Do you? I leaned forward. Because understanding would mean actually changing, getting therapy, making amends, being a different person. Are you willing to do that? I don't know if I can. Then we don't have anything else to talk about. I left the hospital feeling empty, not sad, not relieved, just done. Dr. Ward had once told me that closure doesn't always come from grand confrontations or perfect apologies. Sometimes it comes from realizing you don't need anything from someone anymore. I didn't need Dad's approval or love or attention. I'd built a life without those things. A good life, a full life, one where I was valued and seen and supported by people who showed up consistently, not just when it was convenient. Final exams came and went. Summer arrived with opportunities, a paid internship at a publishing house, another essay assignment from a major magazine, interest from producers about adapting my memoir into a limited series. Patricia and I got an apartment together for junior year, a tiny 2-bedroom near campus with a leaky faucet and terrible water pressure, but windows that let in beautiful morning light. We painted the walls, hung shelves, made it ours. I heard through my aunt that Dad had started therapy after his heart attack, that he'd broken up with a 25-year-old from his gym, that he was attending a support group for parents estranged from their children. I didn't know if it would last, if the changes were real or just another performance. I didn't particularly care. My life moved forward without him in it. I wrote more, published more, built my career and my relationships. Dated a girl named Ivy from my editing class, someone who made me laugh and challenged my ideas and showed up when she said she would. We were taking things slow, figuring out what we wanted, but it felt healthy in a way my previous relationship hadn't. Grandma got sick in September of junior year. Nothing dramatic, just the slow decline of age. I visited every weekend, helping Grandpa with her care, reading to her from my favorite books. She died peacefully in November, surrounded by family, exactly how she would have wanted. The funeral was large, filled with people whose lives she'd touched. Dad showed up, standing in the back, not approaching. I saw him there but didn't acknowledge him. This wasn't about us. After everyone left, Grandpa handed me a letter. She wrote this for you, made me promise to give it to you after. I opened it sitting in my car, Grandma's familiar handwriting blurring through tears. My darling girl, it read. If you're reading this, I'm gone, but I want you to know how proud I am, not just of your writing or your success, but of your strength. You chose yourself when it would have been easier to accept crumbs. You demanded better when everyone told you to be grateful for less. You survived losing your mother and your father and built something beautiful from the wreckage. That takes courage most people never find. Live boldly. Love fiercely. Don't settle for people who don't choose you back. And remember, your mother is with you always. In your writing, in your kindness, in the way you show up for people who matter. She'd be so proud. I love you, Grandma. I sobbed in that parking lot for 20 minutes before driving back to campus, where Ivy was waiting with takeout and a hug, and no expectations beyond being present. The memoir sales continued steadily through the holidays. My publisher wanted a second book, either a follow-up memoir or a novel. I pitched them a fictionalized version of my story, changing names and details but keeping the emotional core. They bought it for twice what they'd paid for the first book. Junior year ended. I spent the summer writing the novel between shifts at the publishing house, crafting a narrative about a girl named Ren whose mother dies and whose father chooses his new girlfriend over his daughter. But in this version, Ren doesn't just expose him at the wedding, she builds an entire life of art and community and chosen family that becomes a testament to surviving without him. Dad tried to contact me one last time through a letter forwarded by Grandpa. Not threatening this time, just honest. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he wrote. "I know I destroyed our relationship through my own selfishness and neglect. I'm writing not to ask for anything, but to tell you that I'm trying to change. I'm in therapy twice a week. I'm working through why I ran from grief instead of facing it. I'm understanding finally how much damage I did. I don't expect you to care or to welcome me back into your life. I just wanted you to know that your book, as painful as it was to read, opened my eyes. You deserved better. Your mother deserved better. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father either of you needed. I hope you're happy. I hope you're healing. I hope someday you can think of me without anger. That would be enough, Dad." I read it twice, then filed it away in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd have coffee and try to build something from the ruins. But not today. Today I had a novel to finish, an internship to complete, a life to live. Senior year began with a sense of possibility. Patricia and I hosted parties in our apartment. I took advanced writing workshops with visiting authors. Ivy and I moved past slow and into committed, talking about post-graduation plans and what our future might look like together. The novel was finished in December and scheduled for publication the following fall. My editor called it devastating and hopeful in equal measure, which felt right. That's what healing was after all. Holding both the pain and the hope, not letting either one consume you entirely. I graduated in May, 4 years after Dad had missed my high school ceremony. This time the auditorium was full of people who'd chosen to be there. Grandpa, my aunt, Kennedy, Patricia's family, Ivy, Dr. Ward, even Rachel, my agent. When they called my name, I walked across that stage wearing Mom's pearl necklace and Grandma's watch, carrying the love of women who'd shown me what it meant to be strong. The empty seat I'd reserved for Dad stayed empty, but I didn't scan the crowd looking for him this time. I didn't need him there to validate my achievement. After the ceremony, we all went to dinner at Mom's favorite restaurant, the one she and I had gone to for special occasions before she got too sick to leave the house. I ordered her usual, chicken piccata with extra capers, and felt her presence in the laughter and the stories and the way my chosen family filled the table. Ivy squeezed my hand under the table. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "I'm really good." That night, scrolling through Instagram, I saw Dad had posted a photo. Not of me, of course. He hadn't been there. But of an old picture of us from when I was maybe 6, sitting on his shoulders at a carnival. The caption read, "Proud of my graduate. Wish I could have been there to see it in person." The comments were supportive. People who didn't know the full story offering congratulations. Part of me wanted to correct the record, to point out the lie. But I didn't. His need for public validation was no longer my problem. I posted my own photo instead. Me in my cap and gown, surrounded by everyone who'd actually shown up. Grateful for the people who've chosen me every day. This degree is as much yours as it is mine. The comments flooded in. Friends from college, readers of my memoir, strangers who'd followed my story. Words of support, pride, recognition, and at the very bottom, one from Brielle. "Your mom would be so proud. I'm proud. You did this." I went to bed that night thinking about empty chairs and the people who fill them, about graduation programs and wedding ceremonies and all the ways we tell people they matter, about forgiveness and boundaries and the difference between the two. Dad had made his choices. I'd made mine, and mine had led me here, to a future unwritten, to love that showed up, to a version of myself that Mom would recognize and Grandma would celebrate. The empty chair would always be empty, but the rest of my life, that was full, and that was enough.